that's what Bill wanted. He's like, can you play some music? And I'm like, I guess it was not very loud, is it?
Awesome. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. How's everybody today? Awesome. I'd like to introduce our speaker for today, Lieutenant Colonel Shannon Smith. He serves as instructor in the Department of Air Power at Air University's Air Command Staff College. Lieutenant Colonel Smith is a career Security Forces officer and has commanded 4 Security Forces squadrons, culminating leading over 1,500 Security Forces airmen. Additionally, he served in direct support of Operation Iraqi Freedom as a brigade commander and commandant at the Iraqi National Police Academy in Iraq. He also served in support of Operation Enduring Freedom as Defense Force Commander in Pakistan. Lieutenant Colonel Smith also has extensive professional military education experience. Prior to his current assignment, he taught at Squadron Officer School and the United States Air Force International Officer School, where he served as the Dean of Education. He further served as Air Force faculty advisor and instructor at the United States Marine Corps Command and Staff College in Quantico Marine Air Base, Virginia. He's a graduate of Troy University, ACSC, and recently completed his Master's of Arts in Pastoral Ministries from New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary. He's also one of the authors of the AU2 Guidelines for Command that is part of your readings. He and his wife Lisa have been married for 23 years and have one daughter, Haley Grace, who's 18 years old. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Lieutenant Colonel Shannon Smith.
We did a sound check. We on now? All right, thanks, guys. Morning, sir. Morning, everybody. Good to see you. I want to spend a few minutes talking to you guys about command from my perspective. I want to preface what I'm saying by saying that this is there's probably nothing that you've never heard before that's going to come from this presentation. Maybe there'll be a nugget or two that you'll pick up on, but these are 10 essential truths based on my experience as a squadron commander, and I was in fact a brigade commander at the 06 level in Iraq, and that was an interesting story. We may have time to tell, maybe not, but first of all, I want to thank Professor DeMarco for having the guts to put a guy who's retiring in 5 months up here on the stage to share my perspective, because I think my last OPR here in the push line says of all the lieutenant colonels I know, he's one of them. So, so I have nothing to gain here except to educate you guys a little bit. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself, because unlike a lot of the big MAGCOM commanders and stuff you get to hear speak, you may not know much about me, and then share 10 essential truths, things from my experience that I think are helpful for you to know, potentially, and then a couple of final thoughts at the very end. You know, I'm an Air Force officer, but it's not what defines me. Being a father and a husband define me more than being an Air Force officer. I am a career Security Forces officer. I absolutely love my career field. I turned down a pilot slot to be a cop. No offense to aviators. I know what the Air Force is all about. I love you guys. I love the support that we give to you in the missions that you do, but I wanted to be a cop from the very beginning. Back then, they didn't let you become a cop unless you had a criminal justice degree, which I didn't have, so I had to come into the Air Force in a different AFSC and work my way into the Security Forces career field. So you may think a lot of people saying, you know, low ASVAB scores and all that stuff for Security Forces. It's not true. We have some phenomenal Security Forces airmen, officer, and enlisted, so I love my career field and the opportunities that it's given me. I've had a chance to command 4 times. Now, I had a 5th time that's a squadron now that wasn't at the time that I was in charge of it up at Clear, Alaska. We were at Ballistic Missile Early Warning Radar Site, which is now designated the 213th Security Forces Squadron, but back then it was the 13th Space Warning Squadron with a Security Forces flight. The MNFI command at Numanaya Training Base, Iraq, we had 1,200 Iraqi cadets every 8 weeks for 7 months, and we had about 130 on our staff. So, and it was I owned the compound, so there was 1,400 or so people that were I was responsible for every day. That was not a designated G-series command, but I had dismissal authority. I dismissed several cadets from the academy who weren't making any effort to perform. I had this equivalent level of squadron experience, and then the other ones were all at Columbus Air Force Base, Mississippi, Hill Air Force Base, Utah, and F.E. Warren were all bona fide G-series squadron commands. I define myself as a servant leader. I think you'll see that in the flavor of this briefing. We exist to serve the people that work for us. Without your subordinates, there is no squadron command. There is no opportunity for you to lead at this level. So I certainly want to work my boss's agenda and take care of the leaders, 2 and 3 levels up, but that's never really been my focus. My focus has been on taking care of my people. If I take care of my people, then the rest of that stuff has always seemed to take care of itself. All right, so 10 essential truths. The first one I'll tell you from changing command multiple times is that leadership change always causes turmoil. I don't care if it's a terrible squadron commander that you're replacing and there's hope that you're going to bring some relief from all the problems that were there, or it's a superstar fantastic person that everybody loved and you're going to come in and they go, oh my gosh, we're losing so-and-so. Whatever the focus is, there's going to be some turmoil every single time. What I would advise you to do is don't make comparisons or talk about your predecessor any more than you have to. If your predecessor had driven the squadron into the ground and you've inherited a very bad organization, everything that you do positive is going to speak for itself. You don't need to make any comparisons to your former squadron commander. I had a guy that replaced me that spent all this time in the first 3 months talking about me. And people calling me right and left from the organization saying, sir, can you believe what he's saying? I said, guys, I'm moving on. I mean, I was an ACSC student coming out of command, and I was here, and I kept having to push the folks away and said, that's not mine anymore. It was a really tough situation. But don't spend a lot of time talking about your predecessor. Don't make comparisons. If the people loved him, then continue to let that shine, but don't talk about it too much. Don't make a bunch of policy changes that nobody understands where you're coming from. There's so many people that go into a squadron and they want to make their mark immediately. And so they start making all these stealth policy changes, and all it does is confuse people and create a situation immediately where you have so much thrash going on that no one knows what to follow and what not to follow. So spend that first 3 or 4 weeks getting to know the people, getting to know the issues in the organization. And it's really difficult because you think, I've only got 2 years. And some of you in contracting and maybe another couple of AFSCs get a 3-year squadron command. And some of you will command multiple times depending on your AFSC and that opportunity. But in that first 3 or 4 weeks, you got to get to know the people, get to know the issues. Deployed command can be an exception, though. When you hit the ground in a deployed environment in a 365, you may not get 3 or 4 weeks to kind of get into the rhythm. You got to go and go. So it could be different. It was different in Iraq. And then circumstances may dictate that you don't have 3 or 4 weeks to settle in and get comfortable either, i.e. there's an operational readiness inspection 6 weeks from the time you hit the ground. And so you got to get up to speed really fast. But outside of those situations, you can figure out a battle rhythm and figure out what's going on in an organization. Encourage them to expose their warts to you. Make sure you tell everybody coming in, look, no judgment. I don't care where it is. I just need to know where it actually is. I need to know where we stand on all these issues. I need to know what you guys think we're good at and what you think we're poor at and why. And spend that first 3 or 4 weeks trying to figure that out before you develop a strategic plan. Now, you may come in with a strategic plan idea, draft, template, or whatever, how you want to go about it based on your experience as an ops officer or a flight commander or whatever in your previous time in your AFSC. But when you come into that organization, try to figure out a little bit about the organization before you roll out a strategic plan. Number 2, this is so important, and I see squadron commanders that have a hard time with this, throughout all my experiences in command and several MAGCOMs. It's excellence in all we do. It's not 75.1 on the PT test, but make an outstanding on the readiness inspection. I mean, you got to encourage high standards and live those high standards every day. People want to be challenged. People want to be part of a championship team. I mean, they really do. Nobody wants to be mediocre. I'm going to talk about this in just a second. The toughest squadrons to lead are the ones that you inherit that are like a 6 or a 7 on a scale of 1 to 10. Because they think they're better than they are. And they think that good is good enough. And that mindset has set in. Cracking that mindset and getting them to think about excellence and being great at what they do is a lot harder. You got to reward performance based on achievement of potential. I'll give you an example of this. I had a young airman, A1C. He was about 5'6", male, 5'6", barrel-chested. He went from making a 65 on his PT test to an 85 or an 86, and he busted his tail. I mean, he ran hard. And I brought him up on stage during a commander's call, and I gave him, a pat on the back in front of everybody because he really had kind of reinvented himself and was putting a lot of effort into this. His potential on the PT test was probably never going to be 100 because he was 5'5" and he was, you know, this is the way he was built. Well, I had another airman come up after commander's call, and he was 6'3", gazelle, 160 pounds. He said, "Sir, I made a 94 on my PT test. How come you didn't give me a reward?" You know, I mean, he just asked me that straight up. How come you didn't? I said, "It's because your potential's 100. Because that guy's performing at 100% of his potential, and you're performing at 90% of yours." I said, "I was out there when you ran your PT test, and you loped around the track in 13 minutes and 12 seconds. And that other kid out there was busting his tail to get a 12:05. I mean, he was performing to his potential. So reward based on potential. You know, I believe you're getting better or you're getting worse every single day. If I go out and run tomorrow, I'll be a little bit quicker than I was. If I don't tomorrow, then it's going to drop. And then the next day and the next day, next thing you know, I've lost all the fitness that I've worked to gain. And I'm not all about PT, but I think it's a good analogy for you're getting better, you're getting worse. You know, you're going to inherit different types of organizations, and you've all worked and lived in these organizations. You want to inherit a 1, right? I mean, just selfishly. You want to inherit a broken organization, because if you turn a 1 into a 5, you are a rock star. I mean, you are. People think, man, look at what he's done. All you've done is get him to perform to a minimum standard again and get him out of the gutter. I mean, when I inherited Columbus, those kids were pulling out their collapsible batons on the back 40 and beating armadillos to death with them. I mean, there's nowhere to go but up from there. They wrecked a patrol car, and rather than calling trans and having trans deal with it, they called an off-base tow truck to get them out of the mud, and they beat the dent out of the side of the car so they didn't have to report it and thought no one would notice. And the entire front of the car was caved in. These were the kinds of things that were going on before I got there. So, you know, when you can convince young cops not to use a use of force weapon on a defenseless animal, that's a huge win. That's a 1. That's a 1 organization. So, you know, yeah, I got all kind of love for that particular squadron. I think we were probably a 7 or 8 by the time we left, but people thought we were, you know, like a 15 or something because where we started. 6 or 7 again is the hardest because that organization thinks they're pretty good. And you have to show them how they can get better. You have to look for opportunities to improve. How do you click up from a 6 to a 7 in an area, or 7 or an 8, 7 to an 8? They're really challenging because you have that good is good enough mentality. Even a 9 on a scale of 1 to 10 organizationally has opportunities to improve. I had the opportunity to inherit all 3 of these types of organizations in the time that I've been a squadron commander. And the 9 is hard because they are good. They are clicking on all cylinders. Getting to 10 is a goal, but you know, we had the Global Strike Commander stand up and tell us that perfection is the standard. Okay, well, if perfection is the standard, I quit. Because I only know one person that ever was perfect, and that depends on your faith beliefs. But for me personally, there's only one person that meets that standard, and it's not me. And I'm never going to be able to meet that standard. Now, is 100% the goal? Yeah, but it's very difficult to inherit a 9 and do anything other than make it a little bit better. But the challenge is make it better. How are you going to do that? So think about those when you analyze your organization. Figure out where you think they're at after a couple of weeks. Are they a 1? Are they a 3? And that will drive the way you build your strategic plan. Number 3 is accountability. It's just critical to early and sustained success. You cannot be a softie when you go into an organization and then get tougher. Y'all know this, right? I mean, this is just a basic leadership 101. You got to go in. You can love people. You can show them, you know, kindness and compassion and everything, but you got to be firm up front. You got to set those standards and clearly articulate those standards. There's no way to recover if you set a tone of being a very soft commander who is very soft on discipline. It's hard to get yourself back out of that. It's the same with your kids. You know, people raising their kids and the problems that they have out of 16 and 17-year-old kids, I could see them coming when they were 8 or 9 in my own family because they weren't disciplining their kids when they were little kids. You got to set the tone right away. This is something that I do that I learned from a former boss of mine. I don't have a commander's call in the first week. I meet with 3 groups of people individually. I meet with my officers first. Then I meet with my senior NCO, 4 groups actually. I meet with my senior NCOs, my NCOs, and my airmen. And your organizations could be different, you know, in the and I put my civilians in the appropriate categories. So, you know, an officer equivalent civilian meets with that group, and so on and so forth. And I give them the same standards and same expectations, but I give it to them from a different perspective. Officers and senior NCOs, you're in charge of making other people do these things well. You're in charge of not just yourself, but ensuring the tone of the organization is set. Young airmen, your job is to show up on time, do your job the best you can, and follow these standards. But I meet with all 4 groups separately, and I try to get out and see every post. You know, as a security forces officer, I try to get out and see everybody and where they work and what the conditions are in that first 3 or 4 weeks. Lead by example. You cannot throw out a standard and then not see you doing it and leading it. All right? I mean, I used to tell my biggest, the worst thing I ever did was, well, it was a big long list, but one of the worst things I ever did is I would tell people they need to keep their cool. They need to be calm, cool, and collected in front of other people, and then they'd see me just blow up and go off, and yeah, right. So, I mean, it's very difficult to follow that standard if you don't, for them to follow you if you're not leading by example. Give specific and detailed feedback. How many of you, by show of hands, have been given a initial, midterm, and end-of-term feedback, i.e. a discussion of your OPR, by most of your supervisors throughout your Air Force career? 1, 2, 3 out of 100 and something in the room? We talk about feedback a lot, but we don't really do it, and we don't do it well. You got to do that well. That's how you set the standard, and you can be consistent with your disciplinary action and your accountability if people know what to expect. I went through all the records of all the airmen that were in my organization when I got there, and I noticed, you know, the ones that have 2 Article 15s already, and this is a cop thing. I mean, we eat our own a little bit, and we're tough. But the ones that had 2 Article 15s already, I said, look, you guys already have 1 foot out the door. You've really got to step it up. Here are the minimum standards. Do you think you can meet those standards? Oh, yes, sir. Absolutely, sir. No problem, sir. Oh, we got this. And about half of them would, and about half of them wouldn't. And, you know, so you inherit situations where you got to take, you know, quick action based on things that happened before you got there. Be on time, and this is something that it seems, you know, self-evident, but I've seen so many squadron commanders just lose their reputation over stuff like sorts and DERs and being late on OPRs and EPRs and decks and stuff. They're fantastic people leaders. Everybody loves them in their organization. The morale is high and everything, but the wing leadership thinks they're garbage because they can't get a freaking OPR turned in on time. You got to stay on top of this stuff. I mean, if you don't stay on top of it, everything else you do. My favorite boss, who's coming back to do my retirement ceremony in August, was just like this. I love him. I still love him to this day, but God, we stayed in trouble all the time because he didn't give a crap about paperwork. And it was really difficult to have a good relationship with the group and the wing commander when that was happening. Don't be that squadron commander. Every wing stand up when you guys are in there and you're that squadron commander that's getting, you know, getting your crap beat out of you because you're not getting your stuff done on time or done right. Number 4, understand this. This is so much different than being a supervisor. Within 6 months or less, your squadron will be your personality. I mean, it will be for better or for worse. You know, there's cultural intangibles that will come from the tone that you set. I'm a very passionate guy. I'm very OCD. I'm very attention to detail. I like to talk. I'm an extreme extrovert. But, you know, look at that last bullet down there. I'm not very good at that. I'm better now than I used to be. So the organization starts to reflect your personality. And you get other people, you know, they see you stand up in front of a situation where you're talking to your boss and you're getting kind of up in your boss's face and being aggressive and, you know, having that ready, fire, aim, not thinking before you speak is what I mean by ready, fire, aim. I have a plaque on my wall at home from the 75th Mission Support Group Commander that says, Major Ready, Fire, Aim Smith, you know, is my going away plaque. I took it as a compliment and an insult at the same time. But what you say is far less important than what you do. Again, talk about being calm, cool, and collected, and then go be this emotional ball of energy in front of people in a negative way. That's going to hurt you. So you live in a fishbowl as a squadron commander. It's so much different than being a supervisor. I mean, everybody pays attention to everything you do, everything you say. You'll walk around the squadron and just say, you know, I think it would look better if this was this. Or the next day, you know, there's people with paintbrushes in their hands going around putting new color on the walls and going, what are you guys doing? Well, sir, you said. Oh, no, I thought out loud. And my thinking out loud turned into them taking action. Well, guess what? They're already working 60 hours a week. Now I've unofficially put 10 more hours of self-help duties on them. I didn't mean to. I didn't want them to go do anything. But I spoke it, and so they went and do it. They want to please you. So much different than being a supervisor. Number 5, there's a group of people that I didn't specifically put on here that I really should. But relationships matter, and add one to this bullet, your fellow squadron commanders. So if you put, and these aren't really in order, but maybe they sort of kind of are. My relationship with my ops officer was extremely important. In the times that I was commanding, our ops tempo was very high. We were either I was deployed or he was deployed, or she was deployed all the time. And so one was in the seat and one was out of the seat all the time. So basically my OPSO was a commander as much as I was. And having a relationship and being on the same page with that person was critically important. So was my relationship with my chief. Frank Crowder will be here, my best chief that I've ever had. He'll be here in August for my retirement ceremony. I'm excited about seeing him. He started a company after he got out of the Air Force. He served 21 years, made chief at like 16. He was awesome. I hated to see him leave, but now he's running his own company, making $1 million a year, doing some kind of LEOSA credentials, which is our law enforcement, so we can all carry concealed weapons if you've ever been in the military. So he's doing awesome things. Your first sergeant, I can't tell you enough, that the first sergeant at the group level that y'all heard from last week is a lot different than the first sergeant at squadron level, right? If a group has a first sergeant, they're usually managing several organizations and trying to help out the senior leaders across organizations that aren't quite big enough to earn their own squadron, their own first shirt. But if you have a first shirt, then they're working your issues specifically. You got to be careful about the relationship between your ops superintendent and your first sergeant, because your first sergeant is probably a master sergeant in most of the organizations you guys will lead in your first shot at command, and your superintendent's going to be a senior or maybe even a chief. And I've seen that relationship get ugly when the first sergeant starts to think that he's the senior enlisted person in the organization. For morale, welfare, and discipline, yes, the first sergeant is your key advisor. But for operations, your operations superintendent, you have to manage those relationships. And hopefully your chief will help you parse that out, or whoever your senior enlisted advisor is. But your first sergeant, you got to keep them on point, and they got to keep you on point. There's a lot of personal one-on-one conversations that happen there. Your section chiefs, of course. And then I put your boss down the line because, again, this is kind of my leadership philosophy is I built good relationships with my boss, but I wasn't afraid to be combative with my boss either. I wasn't afraid at all to tell my boss that what I thought they were asking us to do was not the right thing to do. And you got to be careful, though, because somebody like me, and if you're like me, you want to defend your people and fall on your sword all the time. Well, if you fall on your sword all the time, you're not going to be a you're not going to be a squadron commander for very long. So you've got to find a balance between, again, my former boss that's coming to my retirement, he enjoyed the conflict. He looked forward to picking fights with his boss. Y'all known people like that? Don't be that person. That's not what I'm saying, because that won't get your people anything. That'll just get you in trouble and keep you in the boss's doghouse. But I believe if you take care of your people, you write great awards packages and you do things to reward them, and your boss is seeing your people up on Front Street all the time getting recognized, then they'll absolutely, that'll come back on you in a positive way. The other group senior leadership and the wing commander is critically important. I've seen so many security forces officers who aren't interested in what's going on in the operations group, or operations group squadron commanders who could care less about what mission support is up to. And I'm telling you, you can build relationships you build a relationship with a med group commander, you want to talk about alleviating a lot of headache and a lot of concerns and a lot of bureaucratic red tape that comes with the whole medical business. You can get through a lot of that by building good relationships with those squadron commanders over in the medical group. But your mindset is, no, we're gun toters. They're just, they're not even line officers. No, they're critically important. Their role is just as essential or more than your own. So Get to know those folks. Spend some time with them. When you go to a wing stand-up, be the person that knows everybody in the room. Not in a fake way or in an authentic way, but at least you have a relationship. And when an issue comes up, like with mental health and security forces, I had such a good relationship with the squadron commander that had mental health working for her that, I mean, we got in at 7 o'clock at night, 4 o'clock in the morning. I mean, people would respond and help us. They knew our operations tempo, but they would help us because we had built personal relationships. Number 6, reward your people. Something that aggravates me to no end is when, and I had to get onto a lieutenant for this, an airman wants to re-enlist, and they're hitting their 4 or 6 year mark, and they want to re-enlist, and they've got their paperwork in their hand, and a young lieutenant says, well, come on in the office, I can do it real quick. And they just bring them in there, and they do the oath and sign the paper, and oh great, now I can go back to the MPF. No, they're giving you 4 more years of their life. Everybody that's doing that, they're giving you another 4 years. That's a big deal. If I heard about an airman that was re-enlisting, and I made sure I knew about it as a squadron commander, I would pull the back office staff together. I don't care if it was 10 or 12 or 15 people, and we'd run in the conference room and do an re-enlistment the right way. It's little things like that. If you're not thinking about things like that, you should be, because those are critically important. Not just the quarterly awards and the annual awards and stuff like that. A retirement is bigger than the person retiring. How many of you have been in organizations when the person said, I don't want a retirement ceremony? I always encourage, I mean, ultimately it is yours. It's your career. You can do what you want. But I always encourage people to stand up there and be recognized for their service, their 20-plus years of service, because there are young airmen in this organization that need to see that. They need to see what was involved. What was your story? What was the sacrifice involved in all that time that you spent serving your country? Even if you're not happy because you didn't get promoted or you're disgruntled in some way or another, still make a big deal out of retirements. You're going to do a dozen or more retirements if you have a good-sized organization as a squadron commander. I'm doing one in June that'll be my 100th retirement ceremony that I've had an opportunity to officiate. I will tell you guys, those are the best moments of command, retirements and re-enlistments. And then you'll have to do some terrible stuff, unfortunately, like memorial services for airmen that take their own lives or are involved in bad car accidents, and I've had to deal with all that too. But retirements are a big deal. Make them a big deal. Encourage your people to do them. Quarterly and annual awards, as you guys know, are essential to career success. Ultimately, when your record meets the board, you're not going to be standing there, and neither are your people, to represent themselves at a command, at a board for promotion or whatever. It's the record that stands. And the awards that they win are what makes the OPRs and the EPRs strong. There's a careerism aspect of this that I don't like, but there's also a reality to it that you can say you're taking care of your people all you want, but if you're not taking care of them on paper, you're not taking care of them at all. Because their record is what meets the board, not them in person. They don't get to see what an actually sharp, awesome NCO human being that person is. They get to see what the record says about them. So you got to put some extra time and effort into that stuff. And listen, you're going to be busy as a squadron commander. I mean, you're going to have probably 10 to 12 meetings a week that you have to go to in and outside your organization. You're going to want to go out and see your troops wherever they're stationed in their workplaces. You're going to have all these ALS graduations and Chamber of Commerce events and all these other things that you're going to want to be a part of as part of the Wing Senior Leadership Team. So I'm just telling you, the OPRs and EPRs, you're going to do them right, you're going to be at your desk sometimes at 9 or 10 o'clock. Don't make a habit of that. Don't do it all the time. But you're going to have to put extra time and effort into that stuff if you want your people to really feel like they're valued, because if you don't reflect it on paper, it just doesn't matter. Another thing is, don't accept the cultural norms for awards. We only give commendation medals to tech sergeants and above in this wing. Every single squadron I've led, I've beat that rule. Every single one. And you should be trying to beat it too if you have an airman, capital A, worthy of being rewarded at a level above whatever that unwritten rule is in that wing. Now, I've seen that rule kind of fade over the years because we've had some airmen that have just done some incredible stuff. I went to Shahbaz Air Base, Pakistan, and while I was there, we got there, it was an FBCon Charlie Delta security threat environment. We had no T-walls. It was a new base that Pakistanis were opening back up. We had no T-walls. We had no concertina wire. We had none of the physical security that you would expect. We lived in a tent city. We had the bladders for the bathrooms were overfilling with stuff. You know what I'm talking about? Human excrement. And we had no way to dump it or fill it. The MVP of that entire deployment was a young female senior airman contracting airman. We took her out off base in Jacobabad in a convoy environment. She wrote contracts on paper towels and napkins and got deals worked, and we got sewage cleaned out, and we got T-walls, and we got concertina wire. It was a senior airman. Damn straight she was going to get something more than an achievement medal when that deployment was over. I mean, without her, that whole thing would have been garbage. And, of course, the Pakistanis were awesome, too. So they realized when we got there that we needed more things than we had been provided. But the 9th Air Force folks had not given us what we had been promised, and she took care of that as a young senior airman. If she's not a chief today or a colonel, I'd be shocked. Or running her own company somewhere. Like I said earlier, performance reports meet boards, not people. There's another thing that I love to do, that you really do this, you guys, because this is just the base paper, right? I mean, it's a local thing. It's not, going all over the place. But you put your people in the base paper, you get a video uploaded to the Wings website of them out there doing their job. They'll talk about that for weeks. That's above and beyond writing awards packages and stuff. But if you do stuff like that and get them in the media spotlight, I mean, when I saw all the folks that were involved in LEDX on WSFA back in January, I was like, man, I know all those people. They're on TV. I mean, it's local WSFA, but it was a big deal. It was a really big deal. So take advantage of that opportunity, too. Number 7, and this is where it gets a little dirty as a commander, but this is why you get to wear this thing above your name tag instead of below it. There are going to be criminals in your organizations at some point or another. I'm not talking about people that are making mistakes and need to be rehabilitated. I'm talking about criminals, people that don't have any character or had enough character to get through basic training and tech school, but are ultimately not people we want to continue to serve our Air Force. Don't let them corrupt our service, or whatever branch of service you're in, whatever country you work for. You got thieves in your organization, get rid of them. All right? There's no second and third chances from somebody that's, I had an airman that stole an iPod out of a locker. I'm sorry, but if you're going to steal, you're a cop. You're in charge of enforcing the law, and you're going to steal from a fellow cop, bye-bye. I got no use for you. And I'm sorry, but I just had a zero-tolerance policy for stuff like that. That's willfully deciding that you're going to be a thief. Racists, sexist, bigots, I've seen it all. I've seen somebody that, okay, look, let me preface it a little bit. So you get some of these young kids from never left, Hope, Arkansas, or Beatsville, Alabama, and they're in the Air Force for the first time, and they're stationed in Wyoming or Montana, somebody far away from what they're used to. Yeah, there's a little bit of grace. There's a little bit of grace there for people who are going dramatic cultural shifts from what they grew up in. But there's just a little bit, all right? Not very much. Obviously, with any sort of sexual assaults or anything like that, you got to deal with those swiftly. We have a great system to deal with all that stuff, but it all starts with the commander being very aggressive about dealing with it and getting these folks taken care of and moved on. If your people can't meet standards, they got to go, you guys. It's a privilege to wear this uniform. I still feel that way. I still think about the days coming this fall where I'm not going to put it on every day. And while I'm incredibly excited about what I'm going to do next, man, I love the Air Force. I love the institution of the Air Force. And frankly, the institution of the Air Force is more important to me than any individual that's serving in my squadron. And I care a lot about the people that serve my organization. Don't get me wrong. And I will pour myself into an individual who needs me. But I'm not going to pour myself into somebody who doesn't care about the Air Force like they should. And like I said, young people, you're going to spend a lot of time. There's a process for dealing with disciplinary issues. And, being late for work and stuff like that. Just they haven't figured out how to be responsible adults yet. And that's not what I'm talking about here. We're talking about criminals and those who absolutely don't meet the standards and don't have any desire to meet the standards. Number 8, I've already talked about this somewhat, but encourage good communication. Here's some general rules of thumb that I learned over time, and I think the senior leaders in the front row here would probably validate some of these. You've heard this a million times, bad news doesn't get better with age. But you're going to have situations where you want your people to let you know what's going on. Now, don't micromanage them. Micromanagement drives a lack of trust worse than anything else. But I need to know if it's going to draw media attention. If we've had an accident or some sort of situation where it's going to... I guarantee you, if the armadillo beating had gotten out in the media, man, you talk about bad. PETA descending on your base in droves by the hundreds. I mean, that would have happened. I was stationed at Vandenberg, and every single time we launched a national missile defense test, we had 5,000 protesters at the gates. Imagine if the armadillo beating incident had happened at Vandenberg. I mean, the cultural sensitivities out there and all the endangered species on that base and everything else, it would have been an absolute mess. Don't let that, make sure your people know you need to know about something like that as soon as it happens. If your boss is going to find out about it, then you need to know about it, i.e., the command post is a great organization on a base. But the command post will cut you off at the knees faster than anything else, right? I mean, they will, because they got to get their notifications done. That's their only mission in life, is to notify, notify, notify. They want to get their checklist complete so they can go back to doing whatever it was they were doing before that incident arose. And, we have a good situation now because we have law enforcement and the fire department and the command post, and a lot of bases are all together, so all those controllers are talking to each other. But if you're not a cop or a firefighter or a command post person, then you need to really heed that advice. If they need you to vote on the situation, otherwise they can't make a decision without you validating, yes, go do that. Make sure they know. If they need your help, make sure they always say, hey, if you need my advice, you need my counsel, you need me to advise you, call me. I don't care if it's 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Trust me, when you lead a large organization, any maintenance officers in here? So you guys are going to have hundreds right off the bat, right? You're going to get calls at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. You got those calls as a flight commander. You got those calls as a DO. You're going to continue to get other security force officers and career fields like that, LRS. You'll get to where you can answer a phone call at 2 o'clock in the morning, be completely awake and coherent to tell them whatever it is they need to hear, and then hang the phone up and be back asleep in 5 minutes. It just becomes part of your battle rhythm. Others of you will be in a sort of 8 to 5-ish more office setting where you have opportunities to talk to your people, but don't think you still won't get those late night phone calls. The one thing I'll say about email is we're getting away from it anyway. I don't think it's as bad as it used to be, but it used in the late mid-2000s it was bad. You'd have a commander sitting on that podium from somebody that's right over here and would send an email, about something that they could have just got up and had a conversation about. Now I understand you want to use email for record that you ask somebody to do something and all, but don't think that email is good communication with your people, because it's not. Get up from behind your desk and go walk the halls of your organization. Go walk the hangar, go walk the flight line, wherever it is you work and what you do, and talk to your people. And don't send out a bunch of attaboys on email. I'm like, sir, I got the quarterly awards and stuff. Yeah, that's an announcement, right? But I just want to tell everybody how happy I am with Senior Airman so-and-so when I saw him on post the other day. Go tell him in person. Go to his flight and talk to them. They're the ones that really care about Senior Airman so-and-so. Staff packages. This is really hard. And look, cops are knuckle-dragging cops. We do earn and deserve that reputation. But I'm telling you what, again, some of you guys are just expected to do great staff work based on the AFSC you're in. Stereotypically speaking, if you're a personnelist or a finance officer or something like that, maybe the expectation is there. For us, it wasn't there. And if we could produce something that wasn't written in crayon at Columbus in the first 6 months, it was like, wow, the cops are really writing good stuff. No, they're just, it's just, there's only 20 spelling errors instead of 100. But we got better and better and better at it. And again, you got to do them right the first time. The shoddily written packages, and this is where your organization will really suffer up the chain. Because, you're not going to interact with a numbered Air Force commander or a MAGCOM commander very often as a squadron commander. You'll see the wing commander every week. You'll talk with your boss, the group commander, all the time. And they'll know you, and there'll be some grace for the mistakes that you make in your written paperwork. But when you're tasked to present something to an organization 2 and 3 levels up, or feed a portion of that package, and everybody else has written something great and yours is garbage, it's very noticeable. It's very noticeable. And it slows everything down as far as getting what you want. Things like end-of-year money. I don't know if they're still called Form 9s. It's been a while since I've been out in the field. But if you don't have your Form 9s ready in like March or April to execute, you're not going to get the money at the end of the year. At Columbus, we had a $140,000 budget. Our squadron budget was 140 grand. We got $1.7 million in end-of-year money that year. I mean, it was heart of the GWAT. There was supplementals flowing all over the place. I mean, the squadron budget was almost an afterthought. You know, we had so much money, and security was, you know, a big deal right after 9/11. But we were ready to go, and you know, the wing commander says, "I got $500,000. Who's ready to execute?" Here you go. Form 9 completely done. All the research, all the cost estimates, all the comparisons done, and we got money. So yeah, we're AETC cops running around in the Gucciest gear you can imagine at this little airplane patch in the middle of northern Mississippi with a minimal threat. But our kids think they're badasses because they got the coolest Oakleys and all the other gear, and you know, we got, it's not just that we get the lightweight body armor, and because we were ready to spend the money. Our packages are ready to go. So you got to think about these things as a squadron commander, not just the you know, standing in front of somebody and leading them in a personal way. Number 9. General McDew said this. Has General McDew spoke to the student population this year? I didn't catch him, but I caught him last year, and he said something awesome about balance. I hope he shared it with you guys too. He said, you know, balance is not the scales always being like this, right? Sometimes it's the mission is the priority, you know, whatever you've got going on. Sometimes you've got a readiness inspection coming up, and you had an airman that just took their own life, and you've got this, and you've got that, and the Air Force, your family is just seeing you for the 30 minutes you come home to get a wink of sleep before you go right back to it. And other times, you take your family to Disney World and you turn off the cell phone, the government phone, and say, look, the ops officer's in charge while I'm gone. Don't bother me. And you have to do that. Sometimes there's a good balance. And, you know, you're tipping the scales, and, you know, as long as you have a date night that week, you're okay, and at home and stuff like that. But I will tell you, I could never figure out how to not be a 55 or 60 hour a week squadron commander. And maybe I'm not a good leader, but if you care about people and you're investing in their lives and you're investing in all the issues that come with deployed spouses and, you know, going over and mowing people's grass and stuff like that. I mean, we had all kinds of programs in place to take care of all our spouses when our airmen were deployed. I could never figure out how to do it in less than 55 or 60 hours a week, and sometimes it was 80 hours a week. I mean, I could do nothing from now until the time I retire and still average a 40-hour work week over my career, which John Torino may tell you that's actually what I'm trying to do right now, but I don't know. You got to be, General Mattis talks about this all the time, about the importance of being a good student and being well-read. I know you guys are here in ACSC environment going well-read. We're so tired of reading, and, you know, I mean, you're kind of the slog of the academia of the situation you're in. But when you leave this place, you got to continue to stay up on what's going on. You got to stay mentally engaged in your profession, in the profession of arms. And I see so many people that as soon as they leave the ACSC environment where they were immersed in it, they go right back to honing in on the tactical and not thinking about the bigger thoughts. And, you know, before I was an SOS instructor, all I thought about as a security forces officer was how to guard things. And F-16 was something to guard. I looked down the soda straw of security forces, and that was my view of the entire world. And when I saw an F-16, I saw how many red lines, how many pilots did we get to jack up because they forgot their line badge today, you know, how many M4s and airmen do I need to guard that resource? And then at SOS, they put me in charge of the doctrine program, and I started reading Air Force doctrine and teaching it, and the aperture opened up. But I was only because I was forced to do it as a PME instructor did that happen. But I'm very grateful for that experience because I've had an opportunity to do PME several times and then go right back to operations and command, and every time the aperture opens back up, because as soon as you go back down to your AFSC, it's going to shrink again. But it's never going to be this again. You know, it's going to open back up, or it's going to shrink, but it's still going to be bigger than it was. So, you know, how do you continue to keep that aperture open after you leave here? You read, you pay attention to what's going on mentally. Physically, you know, it doesn't matter about all my great experiences and everything. If I stood up here and I weighed 250 pounds and I looked like Charlie Bag of Donuts in front of you guys, most of you would dismiss everything I have to say. True or false? I mean, we apply that stereotype. And look, we're supposed to be fit. We're supposed to look good in uniform. When I go off base, I am the United States Air Force. to all those customers at McDonald's, which don't go there if you want to get fat. That's maybe not the best example. So I try to offset that by running, but we need to get in shape and stay in shape. And I saw squadron commanders that constantly dealt with airmen that were failing their PT tests. When I inherited Hill Air Force Base, 75th Security Force Squadron, we had 40 airmen that were failing their PT test. By 6 months, we had 0, not one. And I personally ran the 1.5 miles with about 25 of them and encouraged them and got them to gut it out, to get them over the hump, to get all that negativity off our radar. Then we really started focusing on their real fitness and making fitness a culture in the organization. But being fit affects everything. When you're working 60, 70, 80 hours, if you're not physically fit, you're not going to be able to do it. And then throw on 80 pounds of battle rattle when you go down range and you got to ride around convoys and all that and see all your folks. It makes it even that much harder. And lastly, spiritual. Look, I am a born and bred Southern Baptist. I am a graduate of a Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. I'm a bivocational pastor right now. I'm going to be a full-time pastor when I retire from the Air Force. So my spirituality is deeply rooted in a faith that you guys are all well aware of, regardless of what you think about it, for better or for worse. But there's where I'm at. A lot of people don't believe in God at all, but they still have a spiritual nature that they need to nurture. If that's just sitting under a tree on a beautiful afternoon and reading a book, or if it's spending time with their kids or something where they get a release from, whatever it is that's stressing them out, you have to encourage spiritual fitness. But you got to be careful about it. You can't start proselytizing. Other than what I just said, that's the last anybody in my command class is going to hear about me talking about, my faith, unless you come up and ask me about it one-on-one, and then we can chat. But, I'm not trying to say anything about Southern Baptist, make all your kids Christians or Buddhists or Hindus or Muslims or whatever. But whatever they are, encourage that spiritual fitness. If you don't do that, that's a pillar that's going to suffer. The last bullet, their families are forever. Divorce rate in security forces is 68% last time I checked. Of course, we have a lot of dumb stuff that happens, like tech school marriages. Anybody, the maintainers, y'all know what I'm talking about? Oh, we really like each other and we want to go to the same base, so we'll get married while we're at tech schools, so we can go to the same base together. Those marriages generally don't last very long, but you're going to inherit them, and you're going to inherit all the challenges that come with that personal situation. But assuming you're not in that temporary marriage and that your folks are in for the long run, are you encouraging your folks to be good family people? When I hang up my uniform this fall, my wife, who's my high school sweetheart, God willing, is still going to be there beside me. I have a good relationship with my daughter, who's a freshman at Auburn and will be going into her sophomore year. And I had some crazy jobs. I really did. I had some deployments and the dream that you guys have already all lived up to this point as well. But I never let the Air Force, there were times when you could probably say you're letting the Air Force dominate your life. And look, don't get me wrong. I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth a little bit here, because the Air Force is going to demand a lot of you and continue to, especially you guys that have been in the Army and other services in your countries. But they've sent you here because they've identified you as above kind of the upper crust. So you're going to be expected to do those 80 and 90-hour weeks from time to time. But you got to figure out a way. I've heard great senior leaders talk about they will go home at 5 o'clock and spend time with their family from 5 to 8 if they have little kids, tuck the little kids into bed, and then go back to work and work from 8 to 10:30 or 11 when there's nobody in the office to bother them, so they can do paperwork and stuff like that. And their family's not really that impacted. Now, eventually it will be, because you're going to wear yourself out doing that all the time. But you got to be thinking about your family and how you can balance both. I will tell you, the best way I figured out to do it was to integrate my family into the squadron as much as possible. My wife is an introvert and is kind of a shy person still, but she absolutely enjoyed being around all the young security forces spouses. And because she's not fiery, she doesn't get up in your face, she just sits back and listens, and she's a fantastic listener. Those young airmen, the spouses of those young airmen who were always deployed, so they were always mad, always upset, always, their spouses that were left behind while they were downrange 6 months on, 6 months off. I mean, when I left Hill after 2 years and 1 month in command, I had some kids leaving on their 4th deployment. Their 4th, 6th month. I mean, they were just turning and burning. It was crazy. I knew their spouses better than I knew the actual airmen. So that strong spouse network is critical, and integrating your family into your squadron family as much as possible. And you got to take care of those deployed families. I know we're sort of at an operational lull, comparatively speaking, to where we were in the mid-2000, 20 to 2010, 2011 period, but it's going to come back. I mean, in your career in the next 10 or 12 years that most of you guys are committed to be in, at least, you're going to deal with a crazy ops tempo at some point or another. And you got to figure out going in how you're going to set a tone for success there. Last essential truth is this one. Again, you may hear a different perspective from different people who have been equally or more successful than I've been. But work your boss's agenda, but don't sell out your people in the process. You get so consumed by stratification. You get so consumed by that last bullet on the page here. And this is my personal opinion. Careerism is the #1 leadership problem with today's Air Force. Everybody worried about getting promoted, and everything they do is most motivated by the number that is the first 2 characters of the bottom line of their OPR, numbered XX of XX. That's important, but that'll happen if you take care of your people. I really believe that. It always worked for me. I mean, I had a boss that say, look, you're a complete pain in the ass, but you get the job done. And your people get the job done. And she gave me a #1 strat, and I got promoted below the zone to 05. And she couldn't stand me, personally. She was a good leader, though. I mean, she recognized that, even though I was abrasive and kind of a pain in the butt, we got things done. And I never, ever kissed up to her in the way that some folks tried to. And a lot of people were ticked off because it was me instead of them. You got to serve your people first. They're the reason you have a command. Don't tolerate abuses of authority. I had a vice wing commander who had 2 teenage daughters that were very, very attractive, like 16 and 18 years old. And he was convinced that our young security forces patrolmen were going out of their way to interact with his daughters. And the whole thing was overblown, but he started beating up on all the cops as a result. He got pulled over at 10 o'clock one night with a headlight or the tail light out, and it was just a courtesy stop saying, hey, sir, just want to advise you. And he was not in a GOV, he was in a POV, and a privately vehicle, and he got out and started ripping this airman on the side of the road, a young senior airman. And I told him, this is ready, fire, aim at its finest, by the way. I said, I called him that night and said, you're not going to talk to my people like that anymore, sir. And it had a one-way conversation where I was shaking and just totally pissed off and hung up the phone. Well, the next morning, me and my group commander were in his office in service dress. I would have handled that differently today. I don't think any situation that involves you getting your group commander pulled into a dressed down by a vice wing commander is a real good idea. In service dress uniform, your colonel probably thinks those days are past. And when one of the squadron commanders drives that scenario, and there's another quick story. The chiefs, the wing chief, my chief, and the group chief, my OPR that ended up being the one, or my PRF, 2 below PRF, or 1 below PRF was sitting on Colonel, the wing commander's desk, and the chiefs went to bat for me. And I mean, you want to think that the chiefs work for you, maybe. In some situations, and good chiefs will always be deferent to your rank, but don't think for a second that you're not going to survive based on what the senior NCOs in a wing think of you. And those 3 chiefs went to bat for me, and Chief Crowder told me the story later. He said, all we said was, who do you want leading the future Air Force? That guy over across the hall from you, or that young major? And the wing commander, she was smart enough to understand the situation. I'm not bragging on myself. I'm saying I really kind of stepped in it as my PRF is sitting there waiting to be signed, but it still worked out. I took care of my people, but I didn't do it the right way. Your people are going to excel, and when they do, if you take care of them, you're going to soar. #1 thing there, you can delegate tasks, but you can't delegate responsibility. You own everything your people do. Your OPRs are going to be filled up with stuff that you didn't physically do, right? I mean, Colonel DeMarco did not fly 8,000 sorties personally when he was a group commander or a squadron commander, but I guarantee those types of numbers in the ops tempo that he was responsible for as a group commander, squadron commander are there. and that's going to be the case for all of us. On the flip side of the coin, you can't delegate the responsibility when something happens on the bad side. You know, when your airmen are involved in DUIs or doing things that are, you better be ready to explain all the things that you've done to mitigate the potential of something like that happening. And I hope they're genuine efforts, not just fill the square safety briefings at the end on a Friday where you go, hey, don't kill anybody this weekend, see you Monday. Needs to be a little bit more to it than that, because when something bad happens, someone's going to ask you, did you give a safety briefing before that 3-day weekend? What'd you talk about? It's important stuff. You own all of it. But create an atmosphere where your people can excel. A couple final thoughts, since I have the stage and I get to say whatever I want. We're members of the profession of arms. I think we get so mired in the careerist mentality sometime, or the things that we have to do right in front of us, that we stop thinking about that. I wanted to be a cop because I'm a Civil War historian. And, I wanted to be Colonel Robert Gould Shaw leading the 54th Massachusetts on the charge up the fort in South Carolina, And, I mean, that's how I envision a very romantic idea of what being an officer in the military is like. This is the noblest of all professions. Some in my profession I'm going into would argue with that, but I certainly feel like, and some are both, as we have our chaplains in the room. If you view command as a job, please self-eliminate. Just go ahead and self-initiate your, don't take that command you've been selected for. It's not a job, it's a calling. Being an officer is a calling, and being a commander is a next level of calling. And if you look at it as a job, if you look at it as, I got to get command so I can get 06, and I got to get this so I can get BTZ, and I got to get this so I can be a 2-star one day or 3-star, if that's the way you're viewing your command assignment, please just don't go command, because you're just going to mess up a bunch of people's lives. And you got some sponsor up there taking care of you, so they may mitigate that for you, and you'll press on anyway. And you left 150 or 200 or 1,000 people in the lurch. Cultivate a warrior spirit. It's not an